yourself. Who are you?
Who am I? I'm Cara Mitsuko. I am producing this film with Katie. I'm an actress. I'm a producer. I live in LA. Yeah, this is actually my second feature, so it's exciting. It's been a nice way to learn, but also a nice way to feel very like it's sometimes in LA you can do a lot of stories you don't necessarily feel connected to. So it's I think really important to do stories that you care about to like kind of remind your body and your soul that you can do things that you care about too.
So good.
Yeah.
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 It's like with acting, we have control to say yes or no, but we don't have creative control over the project or the content or the story. And it
Yeah.
feels good to connect to stories that we do have that with.
Yeah, it's almost like it's good to strengthen the muscle of learning how to care and learning to find beautiful things. But then it's also really important to just have something beautiful offered and something that you're immediately like, yes, I want to do this. I can feel it deeply in my soul and I don't have to work to feel it. So that now I know what that deep connection feels like and I know what I'm hoping to build in a project that doesn't maybe offer that upfront. Yeah.
That's so good. This is why I adore you because to say that, I'm like, oh yeah, that. Oh, that. Um, so I think that it's interesting because I live in Portland, Oregon. You live in LA.
Hmm.
And yeah, we've connected. I know for me, I like knew who you were for a really long time. And then when I really got to talk to you last time I was down in LA at our acting studio, I was like, how can I work with this human? Like immediately. But you have a connection. So we both attended the same acting studio from different avenues,
Hmm.
basically. I was online and you were in person.
Yeah.
But you also have a connection to Portland.
Yeah, so my husband's from Portland. He was born there and lived out in Boring, Oregon, which is a real place. My husband's from Boring. And um, we lived there. So at the time that I met my husband, LA was kind of losing its charm for me. I'd been here for 3 years and was just exhausted. And we moved to Portland to get married. And so we spent the first year and change of our marriage in Portland. So it's kind of special from that perspective. And his family's all up there as well. So we go back pretty frequently.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, I love that. Boring, Oregon. Yes. Yeah, it's such a good name of a city.
It is when they reminisce, him and his family, they'll be like, remember that thing we did in the boring house? And I'm like, the boring is such a mean word for your house. Oh, the town. Every time I'm like, oh, right. So it's a town.
Are the schools called Boring High School? Because that'd be so funny.
That would be amazing. I don't know. I think that they went to Estacada for high school.
Um,
So they, yeah, all these small town names in Oregon that I've learned.
yeah, I go to Boring Elementary. It's just so dramatic.
Right? And high school even worse because teenagers, ugh, boring.
Totally, totally. Um, well, so it's funny because I feel like I talk about this project all the time, and yet we're on our Wake Up Maggie. Was that my phone that did
Yeah,
that?
I think so.
Sweet. That happens all the time in our production meetings, by the way. My
Balloons.
phone
Yeah.
is very fancy. um, I just real quickly my background. I would just say this for this call in this moment is in some ways, I think my journey with my mom having dementia and then losing her to that 8 years ago opened up my life in ways that I wouldn't have expected. And I think that it's so funny. I was thinking about that. I was like, we don't often hear like death can bring life,
Mm,
but I think it's such a true statement about the world around us, about like so much of our the way we live, like the way we allow things in our life and then outgrow them. We're in fall season right now. It's so evident in nature how death can bring life, but it feels almost callous to say that about a person that you love. But I think I often think about my mom in gratitude in a way, like that her death taught me so much about living. And
Mm.
losing someone you love like that, like it helped me like discover clarity and like how I wanted to live as fully as I possibly could. Um, and the piece that's so fascinating to me is that I didn't start acting or making films until after my mom died. And like here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are making this movie. Um, I would love to hear from you, Cara, about your connection to Wake Up Maggie and like maybe what.
Oh, I was like, did she freeze?
I should have put it on. I guess that's like should be on Do Not
Oh,
Disturb.
that's a good idea. Well,
Whoops.
whoops.
Um, that was my son, so hopefully he'll call my husband instead. But yeah. So what gave you your initial yes to this movie?
Well, we definitely at least the first meeting was just you. Before I even read the script, I think I had a similar like I knew who you were, I had seen you around, and I was like, I do really feel like she's someone I'd enjoy working with. I also feel like, and I think I told you this, I always look for people with internal yes, and I felt like you had that in a big way. Like you were going to do this even if I wasn't on
Mm.
board, and that is such a strong indicator to me of someone who knows knows what they're capable of, but who also is willing to push the boundary of what they're capable of. And it's something that I really look for in collaborators.
Mm.
And then you sent me the script, and I think I texted you when I was finishing it. Well, I tried to. I was like composing an email to Katie, and I started crying again. I have to, I have to fully just like embrace how much this script has moved me. Which, for those of you who read scripts and then see them brought to screen, it's not always a given
Mm.
that the screenplay will work as a written form. Sometimes screenplays are written to be so visual that, as at least for me, as a person who kind of struggles with visuals, it can be hard for me to know like how is this going to translate. Oh, those I was like, is my phone sending hearts? I'm older than Instagram, everyone, so this is hard for me.
You're killing it. You're killing it.
um, so I read the script and a could again, like it's just such a gift for me as a non-visual person when I read a script and I can
Mm.
see it. But at least my connection, and I think part of the reason it moved me so much. Well, there's a couple things actually, Katie, as you were talking about your mom, I realized I've never claimed this one because I wasn't sure how to. My grandmother had, we think she had dementia, and she's Japanese American, and there's been a lot of talk in the Japanese American community, especially among like Yonsei and like fourth generation beyond, which I would be considered, that we didn't really talk about our history in this country during the 40s. My folks were in Maui, and by the time that I really got up the nerve, maybe, or even thought to ask about my legacy, my grandmother was already suffering from what we believe was the first stages of dementia. My aunts were pretty sure they weren't sure how much of what she was saying was like real memory or not so much. And I felt like I, at that point, then could no longer ask and get straight answers. And there was this incredible loss, to me at least, of heritage through my own lack of having asked. And she passed away shortly after that. I started hearing dementia be discussed.
Mm.
But then as far as she was in Hawaii. I didn't see a lot of that process for her. And I was in college and then newly out. So it was just that I didn't visit as much as I could have. There's all these regrets. Listen, and this is kind of the crazy thing about this story as well. And anybody who's dealt with caregiving is that regret is sort of this unfortunate part of humanity, and also shows you how much love you had for the person, that love is sort of getting metabolized as regret sometimes. But as I was reading Wake Up Maggie, this is such a long answer. As I was reading Wake Up Maggie, there's these incredibly specific things that Katie has written in the script, and I kept seeing my sister-in-law Whitney through these things, and it was okay. Well, now we're gonna see if I can get through without crying. But so when I married my husband, his sister at the time was in her late teens, and they believe what happened was a rare disorder called PANDAS, which is pediatric autoimmune. It used to be called acute autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep. So instead of attacking the infection, your body attacks the brain. And what we've seen over the last 10 plus years that I've seen, at least as his wife, I've seen Whitney deteriorate pretty rapidly. And my mother-in-law has been caregiving for her. And at the time of reading Wake Up Maggie, they had just put her in a home a year previous. And oh God, I'm so sorry about that. It is, I all I know is from watching my sister-in-law go through it, and it seems to me to be one of the most terrifying and isolating experiences. I think similar to FTD, and that's what was so shocking to me as I read this film. I kept seeing my mom and I kept seeing Whitney. And by the time I got to the end, I'm not going to give away the ending, but the ending is just such a beautiful, it's this like warm hug for caregivers, and at the same time it does not wrap things up in a bow. It doesn't say, hey, you're going to be fine, just be happy, just be great. There's this beautiful honesty that Katie's written into this story about just how incredibly difficult it is, and how also, though, incredibly important it is to pay attention to the caregivers in your life, to support them, and to, even though they are alone, to just give them the help that you can. And so once I read that, I was like, this is the best gift I could ever give to my family. Certainly the most profound gift I could ever give to my mother-in-law. And I wanted to make the movie.
I'm so lucky. We are all so lucky that Cara said yes. I'm just saying this in all honesty. I'll probably never forget our little video call when we were like, I think it was after I'd already said that I wanted you to produce, and then we like circled back, and I was like, it's a yes for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was like a yes from like way back when, and I'm like, yeah, and you
It
and
was
your
like a say yes to the
yes.
dress moment. Yes? Is it a yes? Yeah.
Totally, totally. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky. And that being said, it has been a long journey, Cara.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
timing has been a little bit longer than I originally had projected. My optimist side is just very ambitious, and she believes anything is possible. Um, so I'm curious if you have anything you'd like to share. Like, we had a question about what challenges we've had and what we feel like we've learned. And I think it's a great question. And there's
Yeah.
always so many opportunities to learn on film sets, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But does anything come to mind for you that you'd like to share?
I mean, it's a really interesting question. There's always challenges. I think a lot of them, as a producer, I understand that timeline is always going to be a challenge and money is always going to be a challenge. And so I go into projects usually knowing that my artists are going to be extraordinarily optimistic. And my job is to support their optimism and also support a potential reality and 25 potential realities. So it's like, if the most optimistic timeline is 4 months, I let you hold that bag. I let you hold the shopping bag that says 4 months on it. And I'm over here with 25 other shopping bags that have different timelines written on them. And I'm just handing them to you as we go, going, this one I also built, and I also built, and we're going to be fine no matter what. And at the same time, I think what I've learned on this project, having done this a few times with other artists, I always learn so much more from the artist than I learn almost from this sort of logistical planning. I do think, listen, if you've planned a wedding, if you've planned a move, you can plan a movie. The hardest part about doing a film is the interfacing, is the interpersonal, like, how do I be there for you? And midwife the film is what I tell Katie a lot. It's like, the thing about this film is that because she's the creator, she's the one who's pregnant. I'm going to midwife the baby, but the difficult labor is for the mother. And there's only so much I can do. And Katie's just done such a graceful job holding the baby and continuing to sustain the energy needed, because this is a very long process. Yeah.
It's such a dance. I feel like I feel like I've learned so much. Like, I could probably talk for a long time about that. But so much of it, I love the analogy of like it being a baby, and like the maternal instinct is so strong, and yet, like, you know, like letting other people hold it and like, and
Yeah,
being
yeah,
like, okay, you got it. Okay, you got it. You got it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, you know, having that very vivid memory of like being a young mother. And like, there were times people would take my baby and I'd be like, please don't come back in the room. Don't come back in the room
Mm,
for an hour or two. Like, I need a break, you know? And then other times where you're just like, are you sick? Like, have you washed your hands? Like, I don't know where you've been. Like, who are you? That kind of thing.
yeah.
So, it's that dance of like of protectiveness and exhaustion and
Hmm.
like utmost love. So much of it's instinctual, and we can trust like our instincts and our gut with that kind of
Yeah.
thing. um yeah, and I think for me, like in my experience, it's just like I have never felt, I just want to say like how deeply supported I feel by you. And wow, like your ability just as a human being, not just a producer, but just as a human, the way you interact with people is so inspiring. The way you listen and really take in what I'm saying, what other people are saying, and like digest that and communicate
Mm.
like if things need to like adjust at all. Like you're just so nuanced and skilled at that, and I can't speak highly of you enough. But anyway, so I think my learning is just like allowing myself to be
Mm.
supported, reminding myself I'm still the mother and it is my baby.
Yeah,
And just and knowing when to trust that instinct and when to be like the child's going to be fine, like it's in good hands, you know.
yeah.
So it's such a good analogy to learn from. um, um let's see, do I have any other? I think we've kind of answered all the
Yeah.
questions. Because the other question was, when did you know that making this movie, when did you know you needed to be a part of
Ooh.
making this movie? And
I'm trying to think if there was a moment in the script that I was
mm,
like, yep. There is a, I don't know, I don't want to give any spoilers. There's a moment halfway through with one of the caregivers, the sort of hired help at one
mhm.
point, where Jane's on the other side of the window. I don't like how many not spoilers can I give out?
Yeah.
And I read it and it just like that elevator dropped all the way to my gut because it was a moment I have played with
Mm,
Whitney. And once and up to that point, of course, I loved everything I read, and
mhm,
then I got to that point and I was like, people need to see this. People need to not
mm,
feel alone.
mm.
Because if I'm reading this and I'm tangentially connected to the caregiver of someone with pandas and I am seeing my experience reflected, how much more what oh
I
my
can
phone did it too.
do that. You gotta
But
send
just
that.
how much more would other people feel? And I do feel like the beautiful part about art is that there's so much comfort in having your experience reflected
Mm,
and in somebody else saying you're not alone. And while I may not have had the exact experience you had,
yeah,
I I can hold a bit of the weight for you for
yeah,
just an hour and a half while you watch this
right.
movie, or give you a window to feel because you don't have the ability, you're caregiving for someone else and you
Yes.
don't have a window of time where you can just,
Yeah.
and we're going to give you a window of time to take a deeper breath, maybe cry a
Yes.
little bit, maybe laugh a little bit and see yourself reflected. I think that's
Oh,
such a powerful gift to give people. So
I couldn't agree more, and I feel like this is why, you know, female led stories, like I think a middle age story, like I think all of these stories that share different perspectives that aren't often shown are so important. But I think just like you're expressing right now, I feel like that resonates with me so much because I think like in those moments of caregiving or experiencing these difficult times, you think you're like the villain in the story. You think you're the one that like you're the only one who
mm,
struggles to actually go and visit the person you love
yeah.
or something like that. And I think getting to tell a story in a very human way and showing like own failures or like,
Yeah.
you know, weaknesses in those moments are very healing for people to be like, oh, okay, this is like a common experience.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like we have a question, Cara, from Joe. Can you talk a little bit about the emotional resilience of the people who are hired to be caregivers as opposed to family members?
Oof,
That's a great question.
the big
I mean,
question, yeah.
uh, I think, you know, I've never been hired to be a caregiver, so I can't share that perspective of what that would feel like coming from the
Mm.
outside. And so I've spoken with caregivers that helped with mom and other people, and I think one of the things, this isn't about emotional resilience, but I would say one of the differences is they know that person in this present moment and they don't have a
Yes.
history of who they were. In some ways, there's more ease in that because they're not grieving interpersonal loss in the
Yeah.
same way. Um,
I'd agree with that. I have a similar experience with Whitney. I didn't know her prior to the panda's
yeah.
diagnosis. Truly, I mean, I knew her for maybe a month. And so sometimes the family would speak to a past that I didn't know. And so it didn't, while while it did feel like a loss in the sense that I have seen her deteriorate from the point that I met her, I didn't know her pre-outbreak, and so it's pandas is known for its acute onset, and
Mm,
it's very, very fast the way that it
mm,
kicks off, and so it's a different thing. I watched her for a week, and after that week, Katie, I was like, my mother-in-law is a saint. Not because Whitney isn't the most beautiful heart; she's the most
right,
beautiful heart you'll ever meet,
right.
and her mere presence gives back, which I'm sure is same with your mom. And at the same time, it was non-stop, and
Yeah,
I think caregivers, that maybe the benefit is that um, they are not aware, like you said, of what happened before. My mom deals with terminal cancer patients. She's been in oncology trials for years, and she often goes in to help the families because that's who she is. She's been a floor nurse, and her when she talks to them, she says, "Put me on the hard stuff.
mm,
Put me on the. You don't understand how little it's going to cost me in comparison to what it's costing you.
yeah.
Don't worry about me. Send me in so that
Wow,
you can do the emotional labor of what you're doing right now, which is so
wow,
hard."
wow.
And I think that's kind of the difference, maybe, is
Mm,
like, not that caregivers aren't doing emotional labor. Of course they are. And I can't even imagine, what my mom and all these people do, but it's not as, it's not the blood relation. It's not the history, the
yeah,
shared history. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think to add to Joe's question about the emotional resilience, I would imagine, and this is just me imagining, but like I imagine as a hired caregiver, you are probably threading that needle between the person you're caring for and the emotional needs of the people who do love them. And I imagine, you know, that could be hard too. Like, you
Mm.
know, either bearing their grief or being frustrated with their lack of involvement or whatever, or too much
Or
involvement. I don't
I
know.
was going
There's
to say
got
too
to be,
much. Yes.
there's
Also.
got,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
got to be a lot of layers with all of that for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And Nicole asked, can you speak to being a family caregiver in the emotional process of bringing in outside help?
Oh,
Yeah.
Katie, yeah.
Yeah, that was I'll speak quickly for me if you're good to keep going for a few
Yeah.
more minutes, Cara.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll probably end the call in about 4 or 5 minutes just for everyone here, and thank you for being here. But you know, for me, oh, there's so many layers to my our decision to bring mom here with us. My mom was living with my sister and her family in Georgia, and they were kind of at their max end with caring for her. And I knew that I couldn't tolerate my mom going into a nursing facility in Georgia because I knew how little I would see her. I get
Mm-hmm.
there once or twice a year, and then knowing the time that I was there, how few my visits would end up being, and I thought I need to have her near me. So we moved mom into our home, and I think that we weren't aware of how far along my mom's dementia was at the point that we moved
Oh.
her in. And almost immediately were overwhelmed with needs. I thought she was more high functioning at the point that she got to our house, but almost immediately realized she was incontinent. Like she was having like, obsessive eating and drinking. Like there was a lot of behaviors that were just really challenging to control. And she wasn't okay to be left alone at our house. So thankfully, we had been able to sell her home and we were able to use the funds from that to hire help. So we brought in, oh, I'm so thankful, like the two people that could come in and help us, like had a quick turnaround in that stage of our life were a lifeline to us because it gave us just those moments where we could take a breath and do some work and feel like parents to our kids and all the things and I would say for us, even with that support, pretty quickly we felt like we couldn't keep up, so we ended up putting my mom into a home, and that was honestly one of the hardest days I've ever experienced.
Oof.
It was hard. It just like it gets me now. Like when I think about it, it's a tough decision. Nobody does it outside of love.
Mm.
It is a loving decision. It's a survival decision. Um, yeah, if you're not able to be a good caregiver if you're at your very edge or over it. So that would be my experience, and obviously we could talk a lot longer about that, but
Yeah. I will say too something that isn't spoken about a lot, and at least, sorry about so many planes. Planes. I'm in a flight path. Is and something that I witnessed at least with my in-laws is, and you write about this in your script again. Like Katie's screenplay is just so specific and so personal to this experience in a way that I just think is incredibly profound. But is turnover. So you might go through so many applicants and you find a caregiver to help in your home, and you're like, yes. And then a year later or 6 months later, if it's a young person, they're like, oh, I got this thing. And it happened to my family, and they would find somebody that they loved.
yeah,
And this was after going through friends and family who helped for free. And then eventually, when Whitney became a ward of the state, then they could pay these people through, through the state. And still the turnover makes it so incredibly emotionally laborious for the family, because you can't even count on your care to stay, and it's not their fault, and you can't fault them for it because they've got lives outside of your family, and yet your family is your life.
mm,
And eventually I think a care home does become, like you said, in order for survival, in order for the person who is receiving care as well to receive more stability,
yeah,
sometimes a care home ends up being the better option.
yeah,
And I can't even imagine, I mean, having again just walked through that process with them.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
rough. It's rough. But I would love to give you a chance if you want to end with anything too, Cara. But
Mm.
I feel like with life in these types of things, like for me, the serenity prayer became like a
Mm.
lifeline, and just learning how to focus on the things that I can control and how to accept the things I can't control. And our instinct and our fear and our grief causes us to dive in the opposite direction all the time. We're always trying to control what we can't or resist what we want to control, versus like, what can I do right now? What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, this movie is something I can do. And it gives me hope, and I hope to have it bring healing. Um, I think movies and indie film are such a beautiful way to impact our culture and our world. And so we're just so
Mm.
excited about the community that has rallied around this, the people whose hearts have been wide open to it, and just know that it's going to make an impact for years to come, and hopefully bring in more support for caregivers, bring in more research for all types of dementias, and really like help all of us
Yeah.
heal. um, is there anything you want to add to that, or anything you'd like to say in parting, Cara?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, just similar to what you said, I think it's a gift that we hope to give people. If you've seen Katie's film Front Porches, one of the last lines in the film is she's saying to her neighbor, "I'm here. I'm here." And I do think that sometimes that is the only gift we can give people. We can do the love part. As there's another quote from Wake Up Maggie, you can do the love part so well. Focus on what you can do. Just be there. And what we're hoping is that by making this film, we have a resource for people and a gift for people that will just be there for them when they want it, when they need it, and when they just need a little bit of comfort and light. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you.
And thank you for everyone that came. I'm going to give you a big I love you. Thanks for joining us. And please just like share. Please always shout out Wake Up Maggie. Like the more exposure this account gets, the better. We are still looking for funding to really make this film as beautiful as possible. It's going to pay our cast and crew. It's not, the funding needed is not to fill our pockets, but to make this beautiful story. So any support you all can give is so helpful and so appreciated. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Nicole, Joe, all of you that came in. Yeah, we'll be doing more lives coming up, so stay tuned. Bye.